Hey guys, Brian from Boas here. Caulker Cay boas are a dwarf locality boa from a small island off the coast of Belize. Today I'm going to show you a couple examples of these rare boas, and I'm also going to go over the natural history and captive husbandry of this locality boa. If you like this video, please subscribe to the Brian Boas YouTube channel for more videos on keeping and breeding boa constrictors in captivity. This is my female Caulker Cay boa. So she was born in 2016. She's about going on 4 years old now, produced by Chris Wolf, who's the breeder. And the first thing you'll notice is that the appearance of these boas is almost completely anerythristic. So they're lacking virtually all of the red and yellow pigment. They just have this beautiful black and white and gray coloration. They're not a true anery boa though. If you look closely at the tail, there's a little bit of reddish pigment in the tail, but most of the boa is black and white and gray in color. So they're one of the smallest locality boas. So this animal is probably about 3.5 feet long or so, and she's getting close to sexual maturity. The adult size for the males is somewhere between 3 and 4 feet on average. The females get about a foot longer, so 4 to 5 feet for the adult female. So truly a very small locality boa. They are quite similar to the Caulker Cay boa, which is another dwarf island boa from an island off the coast of Belize. But the difference is that the Caulker Cay boas tend to be a little bit darker in color, and they also have more blocky looking saddles. So you see the saddles on this animal are kind of regular blocky pattern. The Caulker Cay tend to have more striping and a little bit more of an irregular pattern, as well as generally lighter colors. So one thing about the Caulker Cays is they like to hold on. They're probably one of the more squeezy localities of boa. You can see this female is gripping on my thumb, with all her life there, for dear might. And in the wild, they are arboreal in habit, so they live in the trees, and so they need to hold on like this. The squeeziness isn't nearly as bad as some of the true red tails, so some of my larger true red tails will regularly cut off the circulation in my hand when they're squeezing my hand. But you can see she's just kind of holding on there relatively gently, so not nearly as squeezy as a true red tail. The Caulker Cay boa originated on the island of Caulker Cay, which is a small island about 20 miles off the coast of Belize in the Caribbean. So this island is about 1 mile wide and about 5 miles long, north to south. And it's actually divided in two, so it's technically 2 islands now. There was a hurricane back in the 60s that added a permanent channel of water dividing the island into 2 halves. And the northern end of the island, on one side of the channel, is now a protected biological reserve where these Caulker Cay boas live in a mangrove swamp habitat. The history of these in captivity is that Gus Renfro, the noted locality boa breeder, acquired a group of them from a researcher back in the 1990s. And then he started to breed them. And all of the animals in captivity can be traced back to his breeding efforts. So because the island is now a protected reserve, there's not going to be any available, any new bloodlines from the wild available at any time in the foreseeable future. The Caulker Cay boas are thought to descend from a group of mainland Belize boas that made it to this island many thousands of years ago. They may have been washed out in a hurricane that deposited some of the mainland Belize boas onto this island. And because the island has such a small amount of available food, there was natural selection pressure for the animals to evolve into this small size, which has a lower caloric requirement. So the animals are largely arboreal in habitat, and they live in the mangrove trees and the swamp. They eat a lot of lizards and birds in the wild, much more so than rodents, because that's basically what's available on this island for them to eat. And they may go many, many months with very little food, and then during the seasonal migrations of birds, they'll gorge themselves and take in most of their yearly caloric intake over just a few months. So it's amazing that they've been able to evolve into this much smaller form in the response to the environment on Caulker Cay. And it's a very interesting and amazing story of evolution in action. This is my male Caulker Cay boa. So he's also a 2016 baby, and he's going on 4 years old now. He's a little over 3 feet. In comparison to my female, he's lighter in color. He's more silvery gray, kind of more ash gray on his sides, whereas my female is darker, and she tends to be a little more brown in color. But they're both quite striking looking animals. So these guys, as adults, they can be kept in an appropriately sized tub in a rack system. I keep my adult dwarf boas in the Iris CB110 tubs. And this is fine for an animal up to about 4 feet in size. For the larger animals, you can keep them in the Vision boa tubs, the 30 by 40 inch boa tubs. And these will be fine for the largest adult Caulker Cay boas. Of course, you can also keep them in an appropriately sized snake cage, either a 3-foot or a 4-foot long snake cage would be fine depending on the size of your boa. Because of their small size, it's really critical you don't overfeed Caulker Cay or any other dwarf boa for that matter. So as babies, I feed these guys about once every 2 weeks, an appropriately sized rodent, and that should leave a barely visible bulge. So for a baby Caulker Cay boa, typically I would feed it a fuzzy or small hopper mouse. And then when they reach about 2 years of age, I space the feedings out to once every 3 weeks. At this point, they're taking small adult mice. And then when they reach adulthood, between 4 and 5 years of age, I space it out to one feeding every 4 weeks. And then of course they don't feed during the winter cooling, which lasts for about 2 months from December through February. And so the adult animals are typically eating either a small rat or a medium-sized rat for the larger adult Caulker Cay boas. So my pair is getting close to sexual maturity. They probably will be ready to breed next year. I'm not completely sure if I'm going to breed them next year though. Just have to see how it goes. But they'll be going on 5 years of age next year when the start of the 2021 breeding season. And I found them to be very simple and straightforward to care for in captivity. They take up, very small amount of space and have very minimal husbandry requirements. So it's really a good species or a good locality of boa for someone that's looking for a smaller boa that's lower maintenance than some of the other locality boas. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions about Caulker Cay boas or any of the other locality boas, please just don't hesitate to shoot me a message. If you have any comments or anything you want to add, I'd appreciate it if you write them below. Thanks for watching and enjoy your boas.